Okay.
Okay, we're going to dedicate this episode to Sandra.
Okay.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, friends, to the Jersey Alchemist. I'm your host, Dr. John Gerard Gallucci.
And I'm Philip D'Angelo.
What do you think of the weather today?
I think I just heard on the radio that today is the coldest day, spring day in New Jersey in 8 years. It was 31 degrees when I walked inside today.
Right. And I did the little weather app thing, the weather bug last night. I do that to know whether I have to put my dogs on the first floor or whether I put them in the pen, which is a garage indoor-outdoor pen with a jump through. And no, I wasn't going to keep them outside because last night, where I live, it went down to 24 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's, they're snow dogs, but they're a little bit older, and I don't want to do that. So they let them stay on the first floor.
Yeah, speaking of older and dogs as well as people, it's a real thing. I mean, I worked outdoors for 30 years.
Yeah.
All right, I figured I can get through anything, a couple sweaters, a shirt, whatever it took. But now, I'm like afraid to go outside. I'm like, no, I'm not doing this again, I want to go to Florida.
Right.
I think the next winter podcast is going to be from Florida. We're going to have to do a remote.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. East Coast, West Coast.
Yeah, somewhere with a pool would be nice.
Somewhere with a pool. I have to admit, at the risk of offending the East Coasters, I'm a Florida West Coast guy. Once I tasted Sarasota, of course, Naples, it's like, how do you go back to the East Coast?
And a typical Jersey story. I went to visit my parents one year on the East Coast of Florida, like you're saying. And I don't get down there. I didn't get down there much, but I took a vacation. I went down there. I saw them, and I was going to go shopping. So I pull out of their development, and I look to my right. I don't see anybody. I look to my left, and I pull out, and somebody behind me is beeping the horn like you wouldn't believe. I'm like, wait a minute, Florida? So the guy passes by me, and guess what? It was a New Jersey license plate behind me, and I'm like, really? Are you kidding me? Forget about the ugly Americans around.
Well, maybe he recognized you.
Yeah, no. Then he would have ran me.
That guy.
He might have ran me off the road if he recognized me.
That's funny.
That's it.
Wow.
And as we're talking about being in the car, I was listening to the radio today, and I was listening to music. Now, at my age, I enjoy an old song. I mean, Sinatra comes on the radio. It just seems like music. Back then, it was class. It was professional. I mean, do you feel the same way? I know it's like our parents probably said the same thing.
Do I feel the same way? I have a couple of top artists that I listen to all the time. I mean, my taste in music is certainly eclectic, but about 10 years ago when I was actually taking professional vocal lessons at Mason Gross at Rutgers University, I was, on one hand, I wanted to be a tenor so I could sing opera, which I have a little bit of ability for, but on the other, I wanted to be a baritone because, I wanted to be singing just like Nat King Cole. And, Nat King Cole is such an icon. The question I have, Phil, is, this is a great topic, right? Where, am I blind? Am I deaf? It's 2022. Where are the icons? Where have they gone? Joe DiMaggio.
Wow.
Where are they?
Yeah.
It's like Johnny Mathis. Johnny Mathis is such an icon, and his voice, as soon as he opens his mouth, boom, it's Johnny Mathis. Now, the millennials may not know because they're not being targeted by the marketeers with Nat King Cole or Johnny Mathis, but my God, I mean, they were so unbelievable. So for the youngins in the crowd who may have stumbled by this video, do yourself a favor, go on YouTube, shut the rest of the chatter off, and listen to some of the iconic hits by Johnny Mathis and Nat King Cole. They're not the only ones.
No, and being overall a spiritual podcast, Your Life with God.
Yeah.
The title of your book. I mean, in my opinion, a voice is a gift from God.
Oh, sure.
I know because
Oh, yeah.
my, you don't want to hear me sing in the shower, around the house. It's just not pretty at all. But
Right.
yet some people just open up their mouth and
Yeah.
it's beautiful. I mean, how do they do it?
Yeah. No, I have a couple of friends at work who, um, wow, they might be singing at the nurse's station, not loud, so they're
Yeah.
disturbing, the patients in the patient rooms, but they open their mouth and people just stop and stare and listen because their their ability to sing, which is known as their instrument,
Mm.
is so crystal clear. It's so distinct. It's so smooth. It's so beautiful. The rest of us are just yelling,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's a real gift.
Have you ever been to a karaoke night at a
No,
bar?
no, I haven't actually.
I've been to a couple of them, and it's so funny because not only 9 times out of 10 a recording artist or a group. I mean, not only can they sing, but they're visually beautiful. I mean,
Yeah.
or handsome, right?
Right.
It's a good-looking guy, it's a good-looking girl. But you go to a karaoke night, and some average Joe, will come up there, saunter up to the microphone, testing whatever he's got to do. The DJ will start the music, and his voice or her voice is just like amazing.
Amazing.
You're like,
Yeah.
holy smokes.
Yeah, right.
How do they do that? And they love going because they love singing their favorite song. I mean, talk about therapeutics. How therapeutic is music?
Yeah.
Did you ever
for
use?
me it is. For
Did you
sure.
ever use music to calm down or to get fired up?
I think we do it all the time. I just, you know, it's interesting. The first time I discussed music and its energy with my friend Sandra, my mentor and associate, this was a long time ago. It's like 13 years ago. I said, you do know that music plays with your energy field. And she's a psychic and a medium. And I thought she would have kind of been on board with this. She didn't say no. She didn't deny it. She says, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, even simple chord progressions and from one octave to the next. I said, a properly written song, and I can't call myself a songwriter. The energy takes you up and up and up and up to a crescendo, and it can't end there. If it ends there, your song isn't going to sell. It's going to disturb people. So the energy takes you up, 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 and then there has to be a resolution of that frequency of that heightened energy, and it's got to come back down to baseline or somewhere near the baseline. So it's very interesting from an energy frequency perspective. Music is all of that. Yeah, and it really is. And then I kind of played around on my guitar and said, well, let's see how something sounds if I do, a note and chord progression and I just leave it hanging. Then you just leave it hanging and it's actually disturbing. Right.
I know growing up in the 70s, church on Sundays. If you went to a mass, I grew up in Nutley, St. Mary's Church, which is still there. There was so many people used to go to church, right? How many people are not going to church nowadays?
Oh, that's another good topic.
That's another good topic. So
Yeah.
actually, in the basement, they used to have another mass going on at the same time, which was filled to capacity, and they had two people playing guitars.
Yeah, guitar mass.
And
yeah.
they had a guitar mass, and it seemed
Yeah.
like that was more popular, more energetic. And the
Right.
way those people could sing, talk about singing, like you just wake up and you're singing in front of 300 people,
Oh yeah.
like more
Yeah.
than once a day, and they're playing
Right.
guitars. I mean, the energy that music, it made mass a whole different experience.
Yeah, and I know a bunch of people that are in church bands, specifically at Pentecostal congregations. These people are fabulous. These people, the people you hear on the radio have nothing on these people musically. I mean, these people are master musicians. They're unbelievable singers, and I guess it's understandable. They choose to be people who use their talent in a sense of worship instead of commercialism and making money. Because let's face it, if you if you try to delve into or break into the music industry, in Bob Dylan's words, well, I sold my soul. What do you mean? What do you mean, Bob? Who'd you sell your soul to? You know, the big guy. No, not Joe Biden.
Hmm.
Sold my soul to Satan. Look it up on YouTube. He comes right out and says it. So the people who are talented that don't want to bring that component into their lives, they'll be doing weddings and they'll be doing, church groups and church bands, and God bless them. Yeah.
Look how music mirrors society. I mean, think about music in the 40s and the 50s. I was a big fan of music in the 50s. 60s, it would just seem calmer, easier. They sang about love. I mean, there was a lot more positivity into it. And now you look at today's music, I don't see love anywhere. I mean, it's pretty radical what's going on. I mean, it's society today. Every generation has, that reflection. And I'm not happy with the way music is nowadays. And I'm a big fan of music.
Right. And I am, I would come out and say absolutely that some of the most amazing musicians, singers, songwriters, guitarists, pianists, fiddlers and violinists, they're from trios and quartets, and they're not commercially formidable. They're not. But if you ever want to listen to something that will blow you away, just go to Borelli Legren's trio or quartet, and they have trios and quartets that are people who play gypsy jazz, and they're mostly gypsies, and none of these guys read music. But when you watch them play, it will blow you away. The level of their competency is off the charts, and they've got an entire stadium filled with people stomping away and crowding in, by the tens of thousands. And even Nat King Cole, he's probably my favorite all time. He was the leader of the Nat King Cole trio, and he's a great piano player. Probably played several instruments, but he was terrific on the piano.
Talk about an easygoing voice, easy listening, smooth listening, right? Nat King Cole, I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That voice is magic. Is
right.
Velvet. It is a gift from God. I do believe that.
One of my favorite songs that he covered, of course, was the song "Smile," and I like to talk about that when we get into a conversation about music with people at work and friends and family. And then I invariably, here it comes, I'll ask them, hey, that's a great song, isn't it? Nat King Cole, man, oh wow. And then Michael Jackson covered it. Lots of people cover that song, Smile. Do you know who wrote the song, Smile? And it stops them dead in their tracks. And no one has ever known, unless they were, around me and heard me already talk about this, previously. But Charlie Chaplin wrote the song Smile.
Oh, that's amazing.
And then that provoked me to start watching Charlie Chaplin, the old black and white shorts on YouTube. And as a kid, I loved Abbott and Costello. I also liked Fat and Skinny, Laurel and Hardy, but I did not understand Charlie Chaplin's humor. Maybe it just went back too far. He was such a predecessor. But now, forget it. As an over-the-hill adult, Charlie Chaplin was a genius.
Definitely ahead of his time, that's for
Way
sure.
ahead of his time.
I mean, what that guy
He
did
was a
on
dancer.
film.
He was an acrobat. He was a musician. He was a songwriter. Wow.
So think about entertainers back then and even now. Some acts and sing, right? And are into music.
Right.
He's definitely was one of the early could multitask. That's for sure.
Right. I don't know how many. Contemporary celebrities are multi-talented in that sense. Maybe they are. Maybe I just don't know it. But my father's uncle was a Hollywood actor. He was a character actor back in what I would call the golden age of Hollywood, when Gregory Peck and Anthony Quinn were, you know, on the top of the Hollywood pack, so to speak. And he played in many, many movies. He was a short guy, you know, from Jersey. He was a character actor, but he would come over to the house, you know, once or twice a year, and he would tell us stories and bring us, you know, 9x12 glossy photos of him with Gregory Peck and Anthony Quinn and Barbara Eden and this one and that one, way, way back. And then he would say to us, he says, you know, he says, do you have any idea the level of talent that these people possess? He goes, they're singers. He goes, and they're accomplished singers. You just may not see it. He says, they're musicians. He goes, all of them are dancers. He goes, and then they're actors and actresses. And I was like, well, so I don't know if that's still true. Maybe it is.
I don't know, but I mean, just think of
is Brad Pitt? No, seriously, is he a musician? Is he a singer? Is he a dancer?
Good point.
Yeah, you know, I don't know.
Patrick Swayze, he tried to sing. And he could dance.
He was a dancer, that's for sure.
Right. An actor.
Yeah, he wasn't bad at no.
I mean, but
he may have been kind of a throwback.
Yeah. Few and far in between.
Yeah.
Look how simple it was to start in the music business, though, right? Go back to the 50s, the doo-wop sound. Guys would stand on the corner under the street light and just singing and get discovered, and you could almost walk into any office and here's what we sound like, and just sing for somebody, and then somebody would say, sign them, and give them a shot.
Right, yeah, right. And I can't remember what movie it was that depicted that if some young, talented kid cut a record, they cut the record locally, and they would travel for hundreds of miles to one radio station after the next. And what were these radio stations? Well, it was a little tiny, little tiny house, like a clubhouse,
absolutely,
with a big, huge, antenna over the top, like a high tension wire thing.
Sure.
And the DJ was in there with an on the air thing and glass, and then he would be going like, no, come back later, kid. That kind of thing.
Look at Elvis Aaron Presley.
Yeah.
Right. Now, where did he start singing? Gospel in his church, right?
Yeah.
Recognized his talents, and then he went in and cut a record for his mother for her birthday or for Mother's Day. That's all right, Mama. And somebody heard him sing and heard the record, and that was it. It was off to the races.
There you go.
I mean, how simple was it?
Yeah.
It just seems like nowadays, whether you're publishing a book or making a movie or trying to get a record contract, it's just not simple anymore.
No. No, and I think the level of control is a lot tighter than it used to be, because a lot of those early artists, at least in the United States, all they had to do was coerce the DJ sitting in that little clubhouse booth.
Oh, well, that's...
here, and they would slip the record underneath the glass and say, play it after the next break. And if they could coerce the guy,
they might have slipped it along with a $20 bill or something.
Yeah, or something else. Who knows, right? But the point is, they had that ability to put it on the turntable. That's what it was.
Absolutely.
And now so much is automated. They're big corporations that are owned, here we go again, by globalist people. So they have complete control over what's on the radio waves, and that's no fun.
Well, they say early on, I don't want to use the word, the mobsters really control the music industry.
Right.
And
they still do, in effect.
Yeah, and any contract signed, usually the artist didn't really make a lot of money.
Right.
Which is a shame when you consider the quality of the music and the person and what they used to sing about.
Right.
And basically they were under contract, And then there was Motown. Look at Motown. So you had your doo-wop, and then you had your Motown. All the African American artists went there. The Temptations.
Right.
Right. And that music. Wow. I could listen to that to this day.
Oh, sure.
100 times.
Yeah. No kidding.
That was amazing. And all that music was motivating.
Yeah.
I mean, it made you just want to either fall in love or go out and work. And there were some songs that were to get you to go to war. as well.
Right.
You know,
Oh,
for
of
the
course.
USA and
Yep. Yeah.
you know.
Unfortunately, that's true.
And then in the 70s, you really had anti-war sentiment coming out. After Korea, you go into
60s,
Vietnam,
60s,
Vietnamese,
yeah, absolutely.
Vietnam. Oh, God, I can't
Right.
talk. Yeah, yeah, right. I mean, and music. I mean, it leads the culture.
Yeah.
You know.
It does.
You know, I can't remember. You know what dates certain things happen, but when you hear a song, it takes you right to a spot. Sometimes a song that makes an impression will take you right to the spot you were 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
No doubt about it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Now, there's a song that I still love that reminds me of I had a transistor radio,
Wow.
and it had a little, I guess, a 9-volt battery in it, with the two little clip-in
Yeah.
terminals, and I used to take that on my wrist when I was walking to Little League baseball practice.
Wow.
And I remember the song of the day, the hit of the day that was playing on WABC radio was "Good Morning Starshine." Yeah, and
Wow.
and I had that song is drummed into my head, but it brings me back to Little League baseball. Like the minors. I think, what are you, 7 years old when you're in a minor,
Right
something
there,
like that?
right.
Yeah, indelible.
I remember Sunday mornings driving to church. They didn't play music. The only song that they would play was "Spirit in the Sky," a one-hit wonder. And I know who sang. I should question that. You don't know who sang "Spirit in the Sky"? Norman Greenbaum.
There you go.
Okay, one-hit
Okay.
wonder. Or they'd play
One-hit
that
wonder.
song "Let It Be" by the Beatles.
Oh,
That's
wow.
on Sunday mornings. That was the only two songs WABC radio would play.
Really?
Yeah, because it was Sunday. There'd be a lot of talk radio on, a lot of church
Right.
stuff on. I mean, but things were different. Now you have satellite radio.
Yeah.
And the only way you're going to listen to old music now, whether it's 50s, 60s, Sinatra,
Yeah.
is that satellite radio.
Yeah.
And you have to pay for that, a monthly subscription.
Right.
Do you have satellite radio?
I don't like it.
You don't like it?
Uh-oh.
No commercials.
There go the sponsors.
No commercials. What don't you like about it?
I know this sounds hypocritical, but I tend to not like canned music. But everything is canned. And I'm a big fan of internet videos like YouTube and Rumble, and that's all canned stuff. It's kind of funny. The first time I found myself watching videos that weren't in the flow of what I call live network television, it kind of reeked of like closed circuit television. I felt like I was trapped in a building somewhere watching a TV monitor, and somewhere in the background was like a reel-to-reel tape player. I felt like I was cut off from what millions of other people were experiencing. Because as a kid, when you watch TV, the movies and the shows may have been taped, some may have been live, but the intervening segments were live, and so were the news reports. There may have been a delay in case somebody slipped out with a butte that wasn't going to be acceptable. But it's kind of weird. I missed that kind of go live sense with things that were pre-produced and canned. But it doesn't bother me anymore today with videos because that's how it is. But I'm not a fan of satellite radio. I don't know why. I just feel like it puts me off in my own little phone booth. Kind of weird. Can't quite explain it beyond that.
That's interesting, of course. And let's talk about the way music is listened to as far as records. Wax, what do they call them? Wax, records.
Yeah,
There were
vinyl.
45s,
Yeah.
there were albums.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You had to put the needle down. Could
sure.
you imagine showing that to a kid nowadays? They'd be like, what the heck are you doing?
Yeah. What do you mean I scratched the record?
Those albums are worth a lot of money now.
How many times did I inadvertently, as a kid, leave a record by the window, and the sun came through the window? You were done. You came home from school, and the record was warped. And if you tried to put it on the turntable, it was and that was it. It was done.
Did you have albums?
Oh yeah.
What was your first album that you had? It's almost like your first girl, John. You don't forget your first girlfriend.
Well, we had a lot of 45s first.
Okay.
We had the Seekers, Red Rubber Ball. We had, we had lots of the Four Seasons.
Oh,
Yeah.
Come on, that was
And
beautiful.
yeah, and so we had, you know, lot of that kind of stuff because that was the era.
My father took us to a house in Newark, okay? And we didn't go on many trips with my father, so we were mostly homebodies. So I was like, where the heck are we going? So we went to this big, and Newark, those old style houses,
Yeah.
Victorian, they were ginormous,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
And we went inside, and it was a business. You could, in a neighborhood, you can either buy a used book or used records, okay? So of course I went for the records. And Sly and the Family Stone. Greatest Hits was my first album I ever bought. Oh my gosh. I was like, wow, what kind of music is this? It was amazing, you know? And I kind of leaned towards, after that, Motown and stuff like that. It was just beautiful. Now, after records, 8-tracks. Right? That was
You know what? Maybe, but I was going to say cassettes.
Then you were a man that could afford cassettes. Because only the higher ups had cassettes in their car. The Bose,
Well, it's very. You know what? I admit. Oh, my bad. Cassettes came after 8-tracks.
Yeah, 8-tracks were next.
But that goes to show you, God bless my father. Love him dearly, miss him, but man, he was cheap. And so after we probably annoyed the crap out of him by destroying one record after the next record. I'm talking about a vinyl record. It was scratched because my brother and I were fighting over what song we were going to hear. And give me that, and there goes the arm with the little diamond on the needle, and all of a sudden that 33 was shot, or leaving it in the sun, and then it was warped and you couldn't play it anymore. So we missed the whole era of 8-tracks. We missed them because he was like, "That's it, we're done." Then one day, and I don't know how old I was, maybe I was 12, my father comes home all excited, kind of like Darren McGavran in A Christmas Story when he opens up that box.
Fragile.
Oh, it's Italian, right? And he's got his prize. He's got that lamp with the garter stocking on it, and that was his baby. My father came home with our first cassette player. And it came with a turntable to put on the level on top of it.
Kids were spoiled.
The first album that he came home with that day was Gordon Lightfoot's "If You Can Read My Mind," and he goes,
song.
Listen to this guy. I think he's from Canada, and listen to his harmony, listen to the bass." And I'm like, and then he put that on, and we were all like, wow, Bobby McGee. If You Could Read My Mind, wow! It was like, that was memorable.
He had some voice, Gordon Lightfoot.
Yeah. He still does.
And do you remember in the 8-track? In his 80s. Yeah, right. Yeah. In the 8-track, that's right. He's still touring, I think.
My daughter Gemini went to see him 4 years ago.
How was
it? He was fabulous.
It's amazing.
Yeah, but he just kind of, looked like he had gone through a lot.
Yeah.
There was substance abuse, alcoholism, and he, God bless him, he ruptured his aorta while on stage, while he was in Canada, in Ontario, I believe, and they had he went right down and out, right on stage, and they had to airlift him to a trauma center, and they saved his life. And everybody that knew him, that was close in his inner circle, said, "That's it. Gordy's gone." And no, he came back, and now he's still
saying,
God bless him.
Amazing. It probably keeps him alive, keeps him going.
I think so. Yeah.
You don't want to melt into that chair. But with 8-tracks, it had 4 tracks, and it would stop in the middle of a song and switch to the second track.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It would.
Right.
It's unbelievable. And then cassettes came, like you said, and cassettes were amazing.
Right.
If you had a car with a cassette player in it, whoa, that was high end.
And you better have a good pencil in the glove compartment, right? Why, of course.
Why?
Remember, every once in a while, you're like, you're grooving with your music, and all of a sudden you hear, and you go, and you hit stop and eject, and the machine ate up the tape. Yeah. And if you were lucky enough, you could gently pull it out and stick a pencil in one end,
turn it
and rewind it.
Yes. It was never the same after that.
No, it was never the same.
And how about in the newspaper, in the Sunday papers, they would have that for 99 cents. You can buy 10 cassette players. They used to remember that. I don't know
Yeah.
what they called it. My father wouldn't let me do it anyway. But cassettes were so big, it was amazing.
Right.
And then where did we go? We went to CD players, right? After that,
Yeah.
everything was on a CD, and every car. Think about what the car manufacturers had to go through, right? They're like, oh, 8 tracks, cassettes, now CDs, but
Right.
CDs
Yeah.
were supposed to be high quality.
Well, cars don't have CD slots anymore.
No, no, no. But remember, the higher end cars had 5 CDs. Like
Yeah.
you could put 5 in there.
Mhm.
Wow, that was something else.
Yeah, I had a car with a 5
Really?
CD changer.
Again,
Yeah.
very lucky,
Yeah.
very fortunate.
Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful.
A lot of moving parts. They broke often. They reminded me of, speaking of cars, back in the 60s, just about every family car had an analog clock on the dashboard. Analog meaning you had a big hand and a little hand.
Yeah.
And not a single one ever, in my experience, in my life, ever worked. You know, if it was 12 in the afternoon, it said 6 p.m.
It really did. I think it worked as soon as you drove out of the showroom. That was it.
Right. I think
If you got
even
a new one.
no one expected those clocks to work.
It's
good
fun-
old days.
It's funny you mentioned we were talking about cars. Not only does a song take you to a certain, you know directly where you were when you heard that song, but cars. Like, you might not be sure where you were at this point, but like when somebody says, "Oh, I was driving that Camaro," you're like, "Well, I had that Camaro my first year after high school, or my first 2 years in college." Like, you can go right down. Oh, you had that car. You switched to this car, and you jumped around. It's funny, the different things that jog your memory and put you right back into place.
Yep.
What about lyrics of a song? I mean, let's go lyrics. I mean, you listen to church, and how about country western? We haven't talked about country western music, John. I mean, country western music, talk about talent, in my opinion. Musicianship, vocals. I mean, really beautiful music comes out of country
My
western.
father was big time country western
Wow.
when I was a kid, back in the 60s, growing up. And in Jersey, there was a country western station called WJRZ. Jersey, WJRZ,
Original.
and all they played was Buck Owens, Hank Williams,
Wow.
that kind of thing. Yeah.
Wow.
Little Elvis,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But country music today, I love it because it seems to have a positive message. Like, it's not so outside. Maybe my horse passed away or something like that. It just seems like it's.
Or I ran over my dog with my pickup truck
Yeah.
because my wife left me.
Excuse me. Yeah, except for those not so positive messages. But it just seems so easy to listen to,
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
at the risk of sounding ancient, which I am, the music today, the lyrics, why does an artist have to wear almost no clothes on stage? If your voice is that
Is that
talented, well, there's some people. If you see live concerts, I mean, maybe more of the female persuasion. I think Madonna might have started that, being scantily clad.
Oh, yeah, I guess
A little bit.
I mean, Cher.
Oh,
When I was a kid, I was in love with Cher. And,
Who
and
was
I,
it?
I used to wait for her to come out. She used to come out with like baubles and beads and a bikini.
Wow.
And I'd be like, wow.
Remember the Sonny and Cher show, right?
Of course.
Sonny, wow.
Right?
Wow, that was amazing. One of my favorite movies, Moonstruck with Cher.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
I mean-
iconic movie. Lots of iconic lines.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we're talking about music and the changes in music. What about movies and how movies have changed?
Right.
I mean, there's some movies, even in black and white, that to this day, On the Waterfront, with Marlon Brando.
Right.
I mean, that I'll watch to this day. I mean, that were amazing, that held your attention.
Well, it's kind of. It's sad that some of these iconic productions, and I think we may have mentioned the movie To Kill a Mockingbird, the original with Gregory Peck. These are like lost diamonds.
Wow.
It's like, how are you going to get young people today, and I mean this sincerely, to take the time to, would you please watch this movie? Because some of them are timeless and they never get old. And then there are other movies that to me they're just abominations. For instance, the movie that took the world by storm back in 77 or 78 was Saturday Night Fever. And I guess about 10 years ago, I came home from work late and I grabbed something to eat and turned on the TV, channel surfing, and all of a sudden I see a scene from Saturday Night Fever because the movie was on. And I says, yeah, let me see what this movie's all about all these years later. No offense to people who love that movie, no offense to the company that produced it or the actors and actresses. But for a movie that took the Western world by storm, all I could think of was, to me, it was about as savvy as the creature from the Black Lagoon. It was horrible.
It
was horrible.
That movie changed everything. But I'm going to tell you why, in my humble opinion, and that is the soundtrack.
Yeah.
The soundtrack,
I think you're right,
is what made that movie. And of course, the girls love John Travolta. But
right.
The soundtrack, the Bee Gees, I mean,
yeah,
the
soundtrack was big. You're absolutely right.
You know? Yeah. And I think once Hollywood found out, and this is a great segue between talking about music and now we're talking about movies. In my opinion, what was the first movie that you can remember that had a soundtrack?
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Jeez, I don't know.
I can remember one of my favorite movies.
Well, the musicals, of course.
Well, yeah, outside of the musicals, yeah. Well, you're talking about Sound of Music. I mean.
Well, yeah. I mean, those. I remember going to see that in the theater when it was out. You know, with my family.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, but they were musicals. I guess that didn't count.
No, that's not what I was talking about. Because that music is wonderful too as well. But for a basic movie, and how a director would insert certain music that they're tied together with the scene of that movie.
Of course.
Right?
Well, that's all part of it.
So
yeah.
I'm going to say American Graffiti.
Oh, shit, yeah.
I mean, talk about a movie and a soundtrack that encaptures like what life was really like back then. The Vietnam War just started, I believe, you know, that 1960. And life was really innocent, and the music was amazing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It brought you right back to that.
And who was the director? Little Opie.
Was he the
Ronnie
director?
Howard.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know he starred in it as well, right?
Well, I think he was kind of young in the directorship game, I think, because that movie came out 74.
We were in high school, so 74, 75,
yeah,
something like that. Yeah. And I was like, wow, this music is really cool. And, you know, you bought the cassette tape that had the soundtrack to the movie, you know?
Right.
So there, Saturday Night Fever. I mean, modern-wise, I mean, you talk about Pulp Fiction, maybe. Pulp Fiction had a couple, like the dance scene. They had, like, throwback music in it. Right. I mean, that was pretty interesting.
Right. But you're right. And, you know, you're making me think that, you know, the movies were tied in. If it wasn't a musical, then they figured, well, how are we going to squeeze all of the grape juice out of this production that we can? Let's have a soundtrack to the movie, aside from musicals. And then after the movies that came out with soundtracks were basically a hit, then it was
follow the leader.
Then it was the line of Steven Spielberg films where they had the dolls and the figurines already on the shelves, and the movie theaters built, you know, the gift shop kiosk, so that when you went into the theater, when you came out after watching Gremlins or something, you couldn't get out of the theater unless you walked through the gift shop. And every kid was like, oh, I want that, oh, wanting to pick it up and showing their dad and their mom, this is what I want. And it's just, you know, fleecing the parents for the rest of their money.
You know, you talk about family and movies. You know, Hollywood always puts out these big productions, right? What they think is going to hit, what's going to hit. And I know when my kids were younger, any movie that came out that was for the family and geared towards young children, of course we went and saw. Yeah. And it turned out those movies were like the highest grossing movie of the year.
Right.
It just shows you how that family structure, I'm going back to the 80s and 90s, I mean, it was still there. That despite what Hollywood said, no, people want to see gore or, you know, this kind of excitement. the family. You do something for the family, and it will be extremely successful.
Right, right.
You know.
And I can't, we can't do this segment on, entertainment, the music industry, radio, television, and Hollywood without mentioning that the Intel community had long ago infiltrated Hollywood, a long time ago, and it was shortly after Louis B. Mayer from Metro Goldwyn Mayer came out with that famous line from the movie of the same name, Louis B. Mayer. He was on a golf course and he said to his cohorts, "Gentlemen," while he was chewing on a cigar, he says, "Do you realize that in our industry, the film industry, Hollywood, if you will," he goes, "we tell this country what to think, how to think, and when to think it." And, that was that moment for them when they realized what they had, because it was long before television. There may have been TV sets here and there, but, TVs were not, every home in America did not have a TV set. But yeah, so I was a fan and a victim of all of the World War II propaganda movies. Sands of Iwo Jima, John Wayne, William Bendix, Guadalcanal. Man, I loved those movies.
Sure, absolutely. And then, go years later. You're talking Platoon. If you're going to talk war movies,
right?
You're going into Platoon and a little, especially
Platoon was a bit intense.
That's what I'm saying. They went from all right, a decent movie for its time, but then with special effects and everything getting edgier and edgier. It seems like now,
Well, they went from propaganda, pro-war movies to anti-war movies,
yes.
And the anti-war movies could scare the crap out of you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And now it seems like the shift is going from the movie theater to the home theater, to Netflix, to all these channels, Hulu, and they all have that those TVs made for TV movies. So now it's coming. Whatever they're trying to tell you, propaganda-wise, or even true stories, whatever they're trying to tell, it's coming right into your living room now. You don't have to go to the movie theater.
Well, it is, and the industry, the entertainment and film industry, is much broader now. It's much, much deeper. How do I mean that? Well, okay, there were 3 or 4 major production companies in Hollywood, right? And there were only 3 major national networks. So if you had a TV show that was going to get written and produced, it was only going to be on, NBC, ABC, or CBS.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah. 5, 9, 11 had all the reruns.
The reruns, right? And then, but today it's just an endless list of movie channels, right?
That's it, yeah.
Hulu, YouTube, Netflix. I go on. I don't have the memory. Showtime. I just go on and on and on and on. And what comes with this are the subscriptions, the pay-per-view, and I'm not so sure certain productions are written such that they'll flourish in a binge type paradigm. So you could watch.
I'm guilty of that.
You could watch you could watch 4 seasons in a row. Just keep the popcorn coming at home on your couch, and you can spend a week binge watching any given production, season after season after season. But then there are other productions that are written and produced and directed, and I think they lend themselves more to, we can't wait for Sunday night because there's another episode of whatever on, and people used to run home. I remember when The Sopranos, hit HBO, and my God, I didn't want to watch. I did not want to watch that series at first, and I said, "Oh God, here comes another series where my people are depicted as homicidal killers and psychopaths," and I came home one night again after operating late and got something to eat, turned on the TV, and I must have missed the beginning, so I had no idea what I tuned into. And I was completely stunned the script, by the videography, by the casting, by the writing, the actors, and I was like, oh my God, this I was completely hooked. And then at the end, when they rolled the credits, I saw it was The Sopranos, and I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Homie's hooked.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm hooked. Yeah.
Let's compare, John. I mean, you talked about three major stations. Okay. What were they? CBS, NBC, ABC?
Yeah.
So just three stations, but think of the quality of shows, those TV weekly shows. They had to write a script every week that we used to watch. I mean, yeah, there was a couple clunkers in there that didn't get your attention, right? But overall, there were some great, I know great comedic shows, that's for sure, and some great drama as well.
Right.
Now you go to Netflix or these channels, there's got to be how many hundreds of movies, series,
lots of series,
and you can't find any. Like, you have to go through 19 series, like that one that might get your attention that you can binge watch. Right. I mean, it just seems like the quality overall isn't there on a Netflix, in my opinion.
Well, that's an interesting point, and you know what? I mean, with the explosion of volume, I don't mean sound, I'm talking about just with the sheer number of original made-for-TV series, you know, how do you keep a certain level of quality and proficiency, you know, really high? It's kind of hard to do that. And so when one venue is kind of fighting against another, they have formulas. They have formulas about, you know, where to put the pizzazz and where to put the violence and where to jack it up, you know, with each of the episodes. Is it in the cold opening? Is it after the cold opening? You know, is it 30 minutes in? Is it 15 minutes in? All of this is well figured out, and so I don't know. I tend not to want to get caught up in cable TV series because I find a lot of them are written to jack your emotions, to squeeze your adrenal glands, and that's great. That's all great if that's where you're at, but you know, I'm not there now. I'm not there. Yeah. I just don't want to watch in the first episode of a season 5 murders, 5 cold-blooded, you know, gun to head, you know, 9mm in and a big blowhole at the back of their head. I just maybe I'm just jaded with that stuff. That's not what's going to attract me.
It seems like that's a cheap way to get somebody's attention. You know, like back in the day, even when it was, I mean, a lovemaking scene, let's get a little daring, they left a lot to the imagination. And sometimes, whether it's something violent or even direct opposite, your imagination takes you places better than just seeing that gore or something. What can be
produced.
Than what's going on there, you know? Yep. So that's why I go back to the quality versus quantity. You know, it just seems like back then there was so much quality, and now quantity, that it's just like two different worlds. But then again, is that just because we're older? Same with music. Oh, the TV shows were better back then. The movies were better.
Maybe.
Our parents said the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I think there's, you know, here I am, the old man that can rail against. You know, we were talking before about contemporary singers getting up on stage and they're barely dressed. Most of them aren't. It's the Miley Cyruses that really, really turn me off, because you're an influencer, Miley, and you know you're an influencer, and the music industry selects you to be an influencer. And so what do? You morph from Hannah Montana, which I used to watch with my kids. You know, it was a good kids show. And now Miley is acting like a strung out coke whore on stage. I'm sorry. That's when I just stop and say, what's it all about, Alfie? Come on, Miley. You know, aren't you rich enough Is this really how you want to leave? Your legacy on this planet is to normalize that kind of crap. Give me a break.
Which is a shame because she's extremely talented. Her
Of course
voice,
she is.
her father.
So is Madonna.
Exactly. It's a shame that you have to go to that level to get somebody's attention, to make people listen to your music or go see you in concert. It shouldn't have to be that way, you know.
Right.
But
Right.
unfortunately, it is.
Oh well. Okay, maybe we should wrap up the old talk about entertainment. I think that was a light
Yeah.
talk on entertainment. We just kind of touched on here, there, and everywhere. I don't think we really dug too deep until the last 60 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we'll come back at this. We'll come back at it from a different angle, and I think this was a fun chat.
I had a lot of fun.
Thanks,
The
brother.
old days.
The old days.
Peace.
Okay, see you again soon. The Jersey Alchemist.
Awesome. That was a lot of fun, John.
Whoa.
I remember all that
How,
stuff. Watch the microphone. You don't want it to
How
explode.
long did we go? We went over an hour, didn't we?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay, let's see.